I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd fall for someone in a barn, surrounded by hay dust and the smell of horses, but life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. My name's James, and 6 months ago, I was working 70-hour weeks at a tech startup in Seattle, drowning in code and coffee, wondering if this was really what success was supposed to feel like. Then my uncle called about the farm. Uncle Robert had broken his hip, needed someone to help out for the summer while he recovered. The farm had been in our family for 3 generations, sprawling across 200 acres of Montana countryside. I hadn't been there since I was 12, back when my dad was still alive, back when summers meant fishing in the creek and climbing into the hayloft to read comic books. I told my boss I needed a sabbatical. He looked at me like I was insane. Maybe I was. The first week was brutal. My body, so used to sitting in an ergonomic chair, rebelled against actual physical labor. My hands blistered. My back ached in places I didn't know could ache. I'd collapse into bed at 8:30, too exhausted even to scroll through my phone. But something was happening too, something I hadn't anticipated. The constant noise in my head, that endless loop of notifications and deadlines and performance reviews, it started to quiet down. I could hear birds again. I could smell rain coming. I started to remember what it felt like to be present in my own body. That's when I met Caspian. He showed up on a Tuesday morning driving a beat-up Ford truck that had seen better decades. Uncle Robert had hired him for the season, said he was the best farmhand in the county despite only being 26. I watched from the kitchen window as he climbed out of the truck, all 6-foot-something of him, wearing worn jeans and a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He had this easy way of moving, confident but not cocky, like someone who knew exactly who he was and didn't need to prove anything to anyone. When Uncle Robert introduced us, Caspian's handshake was firm and warm. His eyes were this striking amber color, almost gold in the morning light, and when he smiled, really smiled, it reached all the way up to those eyes. He had dark hair that curled slightly at the ends, a few days of stubble along his jaw, and hands that were calloused and strong, the hands of someone who'd been doing real work his whole life. "Heard you're from the city," he said, and there was no judgment in his voice, just curiosity. "Seattle," I confirmed. "This is all pretty new to me." "You'll get the hang of it," he said. "Takes time, but you'll get there." He was patient with me, I'll give him that. When I couldn't figure out how to properly muck out a stall, he showed me without making me feel stupid. When I nearly broke my ankle stepping in a gopher hole, he steadied me with a hand on my elbow and just said, "Watch your footing out here. Ground's tricky." He taught me how to properly lift hay bales without destroying my back, how to read the weather by watching the cattle, how to fix a fence post that had come loose. We fell into a rhythm, working side by side most days. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it mattered. He told me about growing up on a ranch in Wyoming, how he'd lost his parents in a car accident when he was 19, how he'd been moving from farm to farm ever since, never staying in one place too long. There was a sadness in him, something deep and old, but also a kind of peace, like he'd made friends with his ghosts. I found myself watching him when I thought he wasn't looking, the way his muscles moved under his shirt when he lifted something heavy, the concentration on his face when he was repairing a piece of equipment, the gentleness in his hands when he checked on a pregnant mare. I'd been out for years, comfortable with my sexuality, but I'd never felt this particular kind of pull before. It wasn't just attraction, though there was plenty of that. It was something deeper, something that made my chest feel tight and my thoughts scatter whenever he was near. About 3 weeks in, we were working in the main barn, reorganizing the hayloft. It was hot, the kind of heavy summer heat that makes everything feel slow and dreamlike. We'd been hauling bales up the ladder, stacking them properly so air could circulate. I was drenched in sweat, covered in hay dust, probably looking like a disaster, but I was proud of myself. I could actually do this work now. My hands had toughened up. My body had adapted. "Last load," Caspian called up to me. I was in the loft, arranging the final bales, when I heard a crack. The board beneath my feet gave way without warning. 1 second I was standing firm. The next I was falling through rotted wood, my stomach lurching, arms flailing for anything to grab onto. I managed to catch the edge of the loft floor, my body dangling 15 feet above the barn floor, splinters digging into my palms. "Caspian!" The word came out strangled, panicked. He was there in seconds, faster than should have been possible. "I've got you," he said, and his voice was steady, calm, the kind of calm that cuts through panic. "I've got you, James, just hold on." His hands closed around my wrists, strong and sure. "On 3, I'm going to pull you up. Don't try to help, just let me do the work. 1, 2, 3. He hauled me up with a strength that seemed impossible, pulling me back onto solid flooring, but the momentum was too much. I crashed into his chest, and suddenly his arms were around me, holding me steady, holding me safe. We were both breathing hard, my heart hammering against my ribs, and I could feel his heart too, beating just as fast beneath his shirt. "You okay?" he asked, and his voice was different now, softer, almost tender. I should have stepped back. I should have laughed it off, made some joke about needing to watch where I stepped, but I didn't. I stayed there, in his arms, looking up at him, and the air between us changed, became charged, electric. "James," he said, just my name, but it sounded like a question. I didn't answer with words. I couldn't. Instead, I reached up and touched his face, my fingers trembling slightly against his stubbled jaw, and he closed his eyes like that simple touch was everything he'd been waiting for. When he kissed me, it was gentle at first, questioning, giving me every chance to pull away. But I didn't want to pull away. I'd never wanted anything less. I kissed him back, and it was like something inside me that had been locked up tight for years suddenly broke open. His arms tightened around me, and the kiss deepened, became more urgent, more real. We broke apart finally, both of us breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," he admitted, his voice rough. "Kept telling myself it was a bad idea, that you were just here for the summer, that I shouldn't get attached." "How's that working out for you?" I asked, and I could hear the smile in my own voice. He laughed, this low, warm sound that I felt all the way through my body. "Not great, apparently." We sat there in the loft for a long time, just holding each other, talking in quiet voices. He told me about the loneliness of always moving, never putting down roots, never letting anyone get too close. I told him about the emptiness of my life in Seattle, the success that felt hollow, the relationships that never seemed to go anywhere because I was always too busy, too distracted, too scared of actually being vulnerable. "What are we doing?" I asked eventually. "I mean, you're right. I'm only here for the summer. I have a life in Seattle, a career, an apartment." "Do you want that life?" he asked, and the question hung in the dusty air between us. I thought about my apartment, sleek and modern and empty. I thought about my job, the endless meetings and deadlines, and the feeling that I was running on a treadmill, moving fast but never actually getting anywhere. Then I thought about the last few weeks, the way my body felt alive again, the way I'd started sleeping through the night, the way everything seemed more vivid, more real. "I don't know," I admitted. "I thought I did, but now I'm not sure." He kissed my forehead, sweet and simple. "You don't have to figure it all out right now. We've still got time." But that was the thing. We didn't have that much time. Summer was already half over. In 6 weeks, I was supposed to go back to Seattle, back to my old life. The thought made my chest ache. We kept our relationship quiet at first, not because we were ashamed, but because it felt private, precious, something just for us. We'd work all day alongside Uncle Robert and the other seasonal help, professional and focused, but at night, after everyone else had gone home, we'd find each other. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains, his hand in mine. Sometimes we'd take the horses out for a ride, racing across the fields under the stars. Sometimes we'd just lie in the hayloft, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other in the way you can only learn someone when you have time and space and no distractions. He told me about his dreams, the ones he'd put away after his parents died. He'd wanted to have his own place once, a small ranch where he could breed horses, maybe teach kids to ride. But that took money and stability and roots, all the things he'd convinced himself he didn't deserve. I told him about my dreams, too, the ones I'd buried under ambition and fear. I'd wanted to write once, back in college. Stories, maybe a novel. But that seemed impractical, risky. So I'd gone into tech instead, told myself that coding was creative enough. "Why'd you stop writing?" he asked one night, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my arm. "I don't know. Got scared, I guess. Scared it wouldn't be good enough, that I'd fail, that I'd waste my time on something that didn't matter." "Does what you're doing now matter?" The question hit me harder than it should have. "I used to think so. Now I'm not sure it does." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "My dad used to tell me that life's too short to spend it doing things that don't feed your soul." Took me a long time to understand what he meant. Still figuring it out, honestly. "What feeds your soul?" I asked. He looked at me, really looked at me, and smiled. "This, being outside, working with my hands, taking care of animals, and you feed my soul, James." I kissed him then, deep and slow, trying to pour everything I felt into that kiss, all the words I didn't know how to say. Uncle Robert figured it out, of course. He was old, not blind. One morning at breakfast, he just looked at us and said, "You two are good for each other. Don't screw it up by overthinking it." That was it. No drama, no judgment, just acceptance. I felt something loosen in my chest. Something I hadn't even realized was tight. The weeks kept passing, too fast, like sand slipping through my fingers. August arrived, hot and heavy, and with it came the knowledge that I had decisions to make. My boss had been emailing, asking when I was coming back, hinting that my position might not be waiting if I stayed away much longer. My apartment lease was coming up for renewal. My whole life in Seattle was sitting there, waiting for me to step back into it. But every morning, I woke up next to Caspian in the small cabin he'd been renting on the property, and the thought of leaving felt impossible. We'd gotten into a routine, this beautiful domestic rhythm. He'd wake up first, start the coffee, and I'd stumble out of bed to find him on the porch, watching the sunrise. We'd have breakfast together, plan out the day's work, steal kisses in between bites of toast. It was simple and ordinary and absolutely everything I'd never known I wanted. "What are you thinking about?" he asked me one morning, catching me staring at him over my coffee mug. "You," I said honestly. "Us. What happens when summer ends?" His jaw tightened slightly. "What do you want to happen?" "I want to stay," I said, and hearing the words out loud made them real, made them true. "I want to stay here with you and figure out what life could look like if I wasn't constantly running." "What about your job, your career?" "I can code from anywhere. Or maybe I don't code at all. Maybe I finally try writing that novel. Maybe I help Uncle Robert with the farm. Maybe I just figure it out as I go." He set down his coffee mug and crossed the porch to me, pulling me to my feet. "You're serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life. I love you, Caspian. I'm in love with you, and I don't want to go back to a life that doesn't have you in it." His eyes got bright, and for a second I thought he might cry. Instead, he kissed me, hard and desperate and full of relief. "I love you too," he said against my lips. "God, I love you so much. I've been terrified that you'd leave, that this was just a summer thing for you." "It's not a summer thing," I promised. "It's everything." We told Uncle Robert that night. He just nodded like he'd been expecting it and said there was plenty of work on the farm if I wanted to stay permanently. Said the old foreman's house was sitting empty, needed some work, but it could be ours if we wanted it. He looked at both of us, his eyes crinkling at the corners, and said, "It's good to have family around, both of you." I called my boss the next day, officially resigned. He tried to talk me out of it, offered me more money, more flexibility, but my decision was made. I called my friends in Seattle, explained that I wasn't coming back, that I'd found something real here, something worth staying for. Some of them understood. Some of them thought I was crazy. I didn't care. Caspian and I spent the rest of August fixing up the foreman's house, turning it into ours. We painted walls and refinished floors and argued good-naturedly about whether we needed curtains in the kitchen. We adopted a barn cat who decided she was an indoor cat now. We planted a small garden, even though it was late in the season, just because we wanted to put something in the ground together. September came, and with it came the cool bite of autumn. The leaves started turning, gold and red against the blue Montana sky. Caspian and I would ride out in the evenings, checking on cattle, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of purple and pink. He'd started talking about his dream again, about breeding horses, and we'd begun actually planning it, looking at finances, figuring out if it was possible. One evening, we were in the barn, feeding the horses, when he suddenly stopped what he was doing and turned to me. "Remember that first day," he asked, "when you almost fell through the loft?" "How could I forget? You caught me." "I did," he agreed, stepping closer. "But you know what? You caught me too. I'd been drifting for so long, never staying anywhere, never letting anyone in. Then you showed up, all out of place and stubborn and determined, and you caught me without even trying." I reached for him, pulling him close. "So what do we do now?" He smiled, that full smile that I'd come to love more than anything. "We build something, together. Something that lasts." "Something that lasts," I repeated, and kissed him there in the barn, surrounded by horses and hay and the smell of autumn, and I knew with absolute certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Winter came hard and fast to Montana. By November, we were snowed in more days than not. The farm transformed into a white wonderland. Caspian taught me how to care for animals in the cold, how to break ice on water troughs, how to recognize frostbite before it became dangerous. We'd work all day, then come home to our little house, strip off layers of cold weather gear, and curl up together by the fire. Those winter nights were some of the best of my life. I started writing again, actually writing, putting words on paper without worrying about whether they were good enough. Caspian would sit across from me, working on plans for the horse breeding program, and we'd exist in comfortable silence, just being together. Sometimes he'd read what I'd written, offering thoughts and encouragement. Sometimes I'd look over his plans, asking questions, helping him think through logistics. By spring, we'd saved enough to buy our first breeding mare, a beautiful quarter horse with excellent bloodlines. Caspian was like a kid at Christmas, so excited he could barely contain himself. We built her a special stall, prepared everything perfectly, and when she arrived, I watched him work with her, patient and gentle and skilled, and fell in love with him all over again. Uncle Robert's hip healed completely, but he seemed content to let us take on more and more of the farm's operations. He'd sit on his porch, smoking his pipe, watching us work, and sometimes I'd catch him smiling, this satisfied smile like he'd orchestrated the whole thing. One evening in late May, almost a year after I'd first arrived, Caspian and I rode out to the creek where I used to fish as a kid. We dismounted, let the horses graze, and sat on the bank, watching the water flow past. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. "I've been thinking," Caspian said, his hand finding mine. "Dangerous," I teased. He laughed. "Probably, but I've been thinking about permanence, about putting down real roots. about making promises that mean something. My heart started beating faster. Yeah? He turned to face me fully, and I could see nervousness in his eyes, but also certainty. I want to build a life with you, James. Not just for now, but forever. I want to wake up next to you when we're old and gray. I want to raise horses together and fix fences together and fight about stupid things and make up and just be together. I want all of it. Are you asking me to marry you? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I am, he said simply. I don't have a ring yet. Was going to get one in town next week, but I couldn't wait anymore. So I'm asking you here, at this creek, in this place that matters. Will you marry me? Yes, I said, not even hesitating. Yes, absolutely, yes. He pulled me into his arms, and we kissed there by the creek, the horses nickering softly nearby, the sun setting over the mountains, and everything felt perfect, felt right, felt like home. We got married in September, a year and a month after I'd first arrived at the farm. It was a small ceremony, just Uncle Robert and a few close friends, held right there on the property with the mountains as our backdrop. Caspian wore a suit that made him look impossibly handsome, and I couldn't stop smiling, my face actually hurting from how happy I was. Uncle Robert officiated, his voice strong and clear as he talked about love and commitment and choosing each other every day. When it came time for vows, Caspian's hands were shaking slightly as he held mine. James, he said, you taught me that it's okay to stop running, to let someone in, to build something permanent. You taught me that home isn't a place, it's a person. You're my home, and I promise to take care of that, to take care of us, for the rest of my life. I had to blink back tears as I said my own vows. Caspian, you caught me when I was falling, literally and figuratively. You showed me what it means to live authentically, to do work that matters, to love without holding back. I promise to choose you every day, in every way, for as long as we both live. When Uncle Robert pronounced us married, everyone cheered, and Caspian kissed me like it was the first time and the 1000th time all at once. That night, lying in bed in our house, my husband beside me, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. A year ago I'd been lost, running on empty, going through the motions of a life that didn't fit. Now I was found. Now I was home. And it all started with a fall, with strong hands catching me, with amber eyes and a gentle smile, and the courage to take a chance on something real. What are you thinking about? Caspian asked sleepily, his arm draped across my waist. Everything, I said. How lucky I am. How this wasn't what I planned, but it's so much better than anything I could have planned. He pulled me closer, kissed my shoulder. Best accident of my life, you falling through that loft. I laughed. Best accident of mine, too. Outside, the Montana night was quiet and vast, full of stars and possibilities. Inside, we were warm and safe and together, building our life one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of love at a time. And that, I realized, was everything I'd ever needed.